let's see what else. Yeah, so we're going to continue and probably wrap up the working with the hindrances and using the framework of the Satipatthana Sutta and the work with, last week I focused a lot on the faculties, on the spiritual faculties, which then turn into powers. But they're also used as tools for us to strengthen our hearts and minds, and to also use to combat or to work with the hindrances. So I'll go a little bit more into that today. But first we're going to sit. So we're going to sit for a while. So those of you who are here, a few more people may join us. If you just shift to speaker view, to speaker view, then you should be able to you'll just see me. I've pinned my video. And if you also, just to know, is that what we've been finding is that the question and answer period, because it's recording, if you ask a question and you don't want your face to be involved, and I don't want this to be a reason that you don't ask a question, you can also type a question if you really need to. But yeah, spotlight. It says spotlight a video. Well, I'm not going to do that right this second. I'll figure that out next time. Thank you, though. I appreciate that, Shannon. Anyway, so yeah, you can just turn off your camera and keep your audio on when you're going to ask the question if you don't want your face to be plastered all over YouTube asking a question at some point. But I think it's totally fine. No shame in my game. Maybe a little bit, because I'm human. All right, let's get started. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, one where you can feel relaxed and alert. Bringing in a sense of calm and some kindness, just right in the beginning. Compassion for the mind's tendency to do whatever the hell it wants. So settling in, feeling the breath in the body. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. Sounds outside the room. Sounds inside the room. Seeing if you can allow the attention to rest here in the body, this sitting, breathing body. And the invitation is to rest the attention with this present time experience of this body breathing. Sometimes it's helpful to aim the attention specifically at the tip of the nose or the rise and fall of the belly. And just sustain that attention for as long as possible. Breathing in. Know that you're breathing in. Breathing out. Know that you're breathing out. It's helpful to recognize that present time experience includes all that's happening here. Breath, body, sound, even thinking, or the moods of the mind. So the invitation is to aim and sustain attention on the breath as a primary object, yet not shutting out the other senses. And if and when the awareness comes that the attention has wandered off, lost in some thought or in some story, what's happening about what's happening, with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, just aiming the attention back. And begin again and again. Allowing the breath to be the primary meditation object, while also kind of observing kind of a global sense, awareness of the other sense doors, including the mind. Beginning to just recognize what we call the feeling tones with Vedana. A felt sense of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. Whenever we perhaps recognize that we're dropping out of present time experience or what's happening, and start getting into what's happening about what's happening, this kind of mental proliferation, thoughts, stories, perhaps feelings that lead into memories, projections into a future that's unknown. Right there, just have some kindness, some friendliness with the mind, and then aim the attention back. This breath, this sitting, breathing body. again and again. Just recognizing if the attention wanders off, and with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aim the attention back. Sitting, breathing body, what's happening here, present time experience. Beginning to expand, perhaps shift attention towards the mind itself. What's happening in the mind? Can we have an observational view, utilizing the breath as a grounding, the feeling tones and the sensitivity to turn toward the mind, perhaps see is there hindrances present or in the body. Is there some fantasy or craving? Is there aversion or anger, resentment, sleepiness, dullness of mind? Is there joy? Is there clarity? Is there ease? Whatever it is, just gently noting. Seeing how it changes, breath to breath, moment to moment. And if we get lost in a story, future or past, No problem. Just aiming the attention back and begin again, over and over. This is the practice. right, welcome back. So I have been able to spotlight the video. So when we get into this kind of Q&A, no one will see you but me. At least that's the hope. No guarantees. I'm a relative beginner when it comes to Zoom, even though I've been doing it for years. I try to stay in the beginner's mind. Anyway, I thought I would open before I kind of jump into, we've been working with this, those of you who have been here, we've been working with this topic for several weeks now. And I actually thought I would just open up to, what are you experiencing? What happened during that meditation? Any questions about the instructions, the meditation practice in general? Do you want to ask this question? It's not too personal. How are you applying the practice to the current life-altering issues you're waiting on? You mean the COVID test? Is that what you mean? Yeah. Yeah, just watching watching the waves of. I'm not actually that. I mean, I have a pretty strong immune system. I'm fairly young, I guess. It's relative. Depends on who you're talking to. I'm sure a 19-year-old wouldn't think I'm an old man, but a 65-year-old might be like, "Oh, you're a spring chicken." So, but I am. I'm relatively healthy. I don't have any of the symptoms that feel. So I'm using discernment. Yeah, I mean, and I guess what this practice is present time awareness, seeing when I maybe get lost in some kind of thought, but I haven't been lost in a whole lot of thinking about it. It's really just like I was a little bit just found myself being agitated at how hard it was to get a test and how long I had to wait for the results. Like those are so. Then it was aversion. So then seeing aversion and softening to it, using some loving kindness, particularly during the process. So yeah. Yeah. Um, anyone else want to share about their meditative experience? And then we'll open up for some questions a little bit later. Going once. All right. Okay, well, I'll open up again after I finish. We're gonna kind of wrap up the hindrances tonight because it's been a minute that we've been working with them. So this being part of the Satipatthana, Four Foundations of Mindfulness Sutta, which has been, and actually I think I've come to find out that we don't necessarily, as the teaching team, we don't necessarily communicate about what we're teaching and who's teaching what, but apparently we're all kind of on this trajectory. At least it seems like Noah, Rachel, and I have all been kind of focusing on the Four Foundations of Mindfulness and the subsequent Dharma teachings around that. So, all right. Anyway, so just so hopefully it's consistent and you're feeling like you're not getting inundated, but rather there's overlay, and really it's good for us all to have different different views that have connections, because the Dharma is the Dharma, and our perception or our view based on our experience is what kind of changes slightly. But anyway, so I was talking over the last several weeks about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and just to catch people up. So the first foundation being breath, body awareness. Basically what we did tonight, we kind of went through the 4 foundations of mindfulness in the practice. This first foundation, grounding, connection, present time awareness, breath, body centered. And there's whole practices that can just be really landing and focusing there. And most of you probably have heard me say, I spent a good 5, maybe 6, 7 years just using what's called anapanasati, which is mindfulness and wisdom of the in and out breath. It was the first instruction that I was given when I was about 16, and it just stuck. And it's kind of my primary practice today. Really, I use what's called open awareness. So it's kind of not resting on any one particular meditation object, and just allowing, kind of what I was saying, like about the senses, just allowing awareness to hold the senses. But I don't recommend that right away, because I feel like that just means you can very easily space out. So breath, body awareness, really very focused. Then second foundation is moving into what we call the feeling tones, this felt sense of to feel and to know pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral in all of our experiences, or as many as we can pay attention to. Third foundation of mindfulness is then using that kind of gained knowledge and experience and pointing it toward the mind itself, but not like getting into the meticulousness of the thinking patterns, because that's just thinking. That's actually not meditating. That's, as the Buddha would call, mismeditating. Or to be an uninstructed worldling is to just do whatever the hell our mind wants us to do. But to be able to shape and refine the mind to such a degree that we can use it as a tool, which is the whole point. One of the points, like the way toward the main point, which is actually to experience the unconditioned, or the deathless, which is also a hardcore band that my buddy plays in. So check them out, Spotify, the Deathless. And let's see, my promotion got me lost. Thinking, third foundation of mindfulness. Yeah, we're trying to see the kind of themes in the mind, the moods of the mind. And when I say mind, I actually really mean mind heart, because that's the word chitta. The word chitta, or the word in Pali, is mind heart, which means kind of the same thing. So we're also kind of looking at, and I've talked a little bit about thought, behavior, and emotion, and how these 3 are intertwined. And then using that to turn toward this 4th foundation of mindfulness, which is really unpacking or understanding the teachings, using this particular lens of the hindrances and the 5 faculties. So just to review, the hindrances, which you may have experienced one or several during this meditation, is wanting or craving, kind of pleasure-seeking, fantasy, aversion, anger, ill will, resentment, sleepiness or drowsiness, dullness of mind. Oh, by the way, somebody asked me last week, I think it was last week, sloth and torpor, like what is sloth and torpor, and like how do you know the difference? And so I wasn't quite sure, but I looked it up. And so sloth is actually it's a bodily sensation of that kind of I guess, fatigue or feeling tired in the body during meditation. And then torpor is really more what I call sluggishness or dullness of mind. Um, so that's the difference between sloth and torpor. But hey, Google it and see for yourself. What else? Where was I? Sleepiness, restlessness, agitation, anxiety. This is what we call anxiety. And some of sloth and torpor, sloth and torpor, I actually kind of equate with depression. That if we really think about what is depression, depression tends to be regret, remorse, past, like the mind kind of floating to the past and being kind of attached to regret, remorse, maybe shame a bit. And these are, just giving different language to, from a psychological standpoint, but it's basically past oriented. Like if we notice, oh, the attention, this is third foundation. If we're noticing my attention moves to the past and I'm kind of caught in regret and remorse, and then, oh, wow, do I start to get sluggish or sleepy as a defense mechanism? These are things that we can begin to notice in the mind. Now, again, it's not the doing, but it's the being aware. So we're not like figuring it out. It's not like you're sitting in a, therapy session and you're, trying to kind of figure it out cognitive behaviorally. This is experiential. We're experientially opening to a receptivity. That's my understanding anyway. Okay, and so anxiety, restlessness, this is often a leaning forward or a moving into future thinking. Worry could also lead into doubt. Restlessness and agitation is also just the kind of, it sometimes can come from being too, I guess I'd say, kind of aggressive in our meditation. If we're like too aggressive in our meditation, we don't have a balance of concentration and mindfulness, or that kind attention, then we're going to fall into like what I used to call the Dharma Soldier. And I did this for probably 10 years. I was so focused on kind of being like a perfect, like, I don't know, I guess perfect meditator. Like I would like sit for really long periods of time and try to get super concentrated. And there's a benefit in that, but it didn't have a lot of heart in it. There wasn't softness. I hadn't learned that yet. And so what I had was a lot of agitation and a lot of busyness in my mind and a lot of distraction. And I had to learn to work with that. But these are also, things that we're kind of talking about that we can experience in meditation. So the last one being doubt. And doubt or disbelief, it can be doubt or disbelief in our own ability as meditators, our own ability as humans, our own ability to succeed in life. We start to doubt, question, ambivalence, ambiguousness. Sometimes this plays itself out even before we start to meditate in the, there's so many things I'd rather do, or I can do, or I don't really have the time. Like this is, it's like can be excuse making a little bit. And also just kind of disbelief, like what I think traditionally what they talk about is disbelief in like the Buddha's enlightenment, the existence of, nibbana as a state, as a purified state, you could say. The Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, just kind of disbelief or doubting in that. Not that questioning isn't totally encouraged. It's absolutely encouraged. And the fact that I was able to question and could approach this practice with a form of kind of skepticism was great for me. And I was very appreciative because I have a skeptical mind, like maybe some of you. And yeah, so that's it for the review. And I went over some aspects. I went over the faculties last week, but I'm just going to kind of move on from here. I wanted to give another view of what the Buddha actually gave as an analogy for the mind states of these hindrances. So I'll just kind of run through it. This is like pulled straight out of the Buddha Dharma. So to be free, so the Buddha says, to be free from sensual desire is like being relieved of a heavy debt. To be free from aversion is like recovering from a physical illness. To be freed from sloth and torpor is akin to being released from prison. To be free from agitation or restlessness and worry is like being liberated from slavery. To be free from doubt is like crossing a dangerous desert safely. So let's just kind of reflect upon that. I'll read it again. Sensual doubt, to be free from, sensual desire, craving, fantasy, is like being relieved of a heavy debt. To be free from aversion, ill will, resentment, is like recovering from a physical illness. To be free from sloth and torpor is akin to being released from prison. To be free from agitation, restlessness, and worry is like being liberated from slavery. And to be free from doubt is like crossing a dangerous desert safely. I just like this description. Either last week or the week before, I gave the description of kind of the pond and the, feeling dyed and the wind and muck and these different other kind of states, which is like kind of the classic example. But I really like this one, and the Buddha goes on to kind of talk about giving reasons why he kind of said this. Sensual desire agitating the mind is comparable to being heavily in debt. So thinking about like being heavily in debt and just constantly kind of wanting to be, free of that debt. The tension created through aversion being quite literally like a dis-ease or a disease. So if you think about being, just plagued with anger or aversion, can't shake it. It's like having this dis-ease. Sloth and torpor dulls and imprisons the mind, while agitation, restlessness, and worry can control the mind to such an extent that one is completely at its mercy. And doubt leaves one in a state of insecurity, not knowing which way to turn. Yeah, I just like those. So to see and understand and unpack the hindrances is like being, feeling safe, being freed, having some freedom, being released, being healed, being given medicine, having maybe the security of, or even just the relief of not feeling indebted. So for these reasons, the challenge is to see the hindrances as they arise. If one can recognize them and contemplate them as a meditation, one's practice will lead to the purification of one's mind. I've talked about my feeling of what it was meant by purification, but it's basically, it really means like letting go of these hindrances is purifying the mind. And as I've read in the past, luminous is the mind, brightly shining. Right? This is what is talked about when the hindrances are not present. Now, I want to just give us a reality test. Not until the moment before the Buddha's enlightenment, like full awakening, seeing clearly, freedom from suffering, the hindrances were at play. So just moments before. So, let's not take ourselves too seriously in the fact that maybe to say that this isn't attainable. It is, but it's challenging. It can take many years, and especially as a layperson who is only meditating every once in a while or coming to a Dharma talk. I remember when I was training as a novice monk, or what's called an anagarika in northeastern Thailand, and I was contemplating being a monk at this time, and it was enticing to me, but I had some aversion to it. I don't know. It just seemed kind of boring at one end, and I also became clear that I maybe only wanted to do a temporary ordination, and that particular monastery was like a life ordination. But I remember asking some of these elder monks about the possibility of becoming enlightened or awakened as a layperson, as a non-monastic. So I'm asking monks who have been monks for 30 years or more if it's possible to become liberated from suffering as a layperson, going to the beach on Sunday and eating dinner and having a choice of what to wear and working for a living and cars and relationships and just life and family and all that kind of stuff. And actually, so he just said very simply, like, look who you're asking, which was great for me. It was a good answer. Just look who you're asking. You're asking a monk who's dedicated himself for 30 years. Upon further, investigation, there has been some lay people who have, reached what is called nibbana or stream entry, or the eradication of the hindrances. But to have that be sustained basically from the monastic view, it's highly unlikely. I'm not saying that that's the truth. I'm just saying that's the monastic view. So how do we work with the mind? How do we work with, and also just, I guess I just want to finish that thought. One of the teachings that I love is that, so maybe let's just say, full liberation of suffering, complete transcendence of these planes of existence is maybe not within our reach. Okay. Some liberation from suffering, some lessening of the anguish that one experiences mentally, physically, emotionally, is totally worth it. A increased discernment, an increased balance of heart, mind, increased compassion, totally worth it. And that there will be insights or nibbana, little nibbanas, like moments of clarity along the way. So anyway, just to say that much. Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about some of the ways in which some of the elder monks and, throughout the suttas talks about working with the hindrances. So working with the hindrances as practice, right? So kind of like when we see the hindrance arising, sloth or torpor, that we use, that becomes the meditation object. We see it, we allow it, and we don't try to shut it out. We don't blame it. We don't get pissed at our mind for being caught in restlessness. Instead, we just turn toward it, seeing it clearly, recognizing the hindrances as they arise. So this is one of the things that's talked about, the noticing the presence of and the absence of. So the presence of, say, restlessness or agitation, or the absence of restlessness and agitation. I like to use this as a way of working with depression or anxiety for that matter. So recognizing the presence of depression or the absence of depression, sometimes, or the presence of anxiety or the absence of anxiety, or any of the hindrances. So, and then acknowledging that they're passing away as they're passing away. So when we begin to kind of fine tune the mind, and we can see the moods, and we could see thoughts are kind of arising and passing away, we can begin to see that process, and it's works in cycles. And again, seeing when they're not present. So knowing the conditions of their future prevention of arising. Knowing the conditions of their future prevention of arising. So kind of, okay, learning from our experience. Okay, well, when this certain set of conditions happens, perhaps I become more agitated. And then so by applying mindfulness and applying awareness of that, then we can, perhaps we can't necessarily stop it, but we might be able to see it earlier in the process. So in essence, we work with seeing the obstacles to meditation as the meditation objects themselves. Turning your awareness toward the hindrance takes the power out of it, as in anger or desire. If we can see anger, or make anger or desire or fantasy craving a object of meditation, then we're no longer engulfed in it. We're no longer enthralled in that process. There's some separation, hopefully. All right, so a few more minutes, then I'll open up to some questions. At any time, we may have several. I talked about this last week. Someone was talking about multi hindrances, like seeing, I saw several hindrances. Yeah, that's possible. We might have agitation and restlessness, and then anger and ill will, and then sloth and torpor, all in one meditation, definitely all in one day. We might have all of these all throughout the day. And these are normal obstacles on our path, right? That can be worked with. But how do we apply these 5 faculties, which I talked about last week? So the 5 faculties: awareness, or mindfulness, effort, confidence or faith, concentration, and wisdom. So these are known as the 5 faculties, which over time can transform into what's called powers, which basically just means strengthening our ability to apply them. And who knows, maybe it means we can levitate and read people's minds. There are some stories that the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples could do that. But I don't know, because I wasn't there. Okay, so awareness or mindfulness. So see the hindrance. I see you, aversion, sleepiness, and then using the kind of "it's like this" practice. Right? the effort, using effort or energy, increase your effort, right? So particularly with sloth and torpor, or like sluggishness of mind, so increasing our efforts, energy. So instead of kind of giving in, we can do, there's lots of things. One is like strong determination. This works, I think, also with agitation. I would notice there'd be times where I would just be either like twitchy or always constantly seeking comfort in moving my posture. And there's not that there's anything wrong with that, but to rebel against that tendency to do what's called strong determination, which really means like sitting still, like don't move, don't scratch the itch. And when it comes to sloth and torpor, it really means like applying, kind of more energy and effort into the meditation itself. That also might look like opening the eyes, changing postures. So instead of just giving up and stopping meditation, oh, I'm too sleepy to meditate, stand up, open your eyes, allow some light in. There's other tools and tips, as they say, given in some of the suttas around, splashing cold water on your face. In the Zen, in the Rinzai Zen, they would have someone with a stick that would walk around, and when they saw someone, they had given permission to get a smack on the back with a stick to kind of alert them to kind of, there's some stories in the suttas about monks like sitting on the edge of a well, so that if they were to fall asleep or that they could fall into the well, and that would kind of keep them awake. Also, meditating in graveyards was used, or meditating where there had been tigers, spotted. Would bring a certain level of alertness, I would imagine, and acuity to the moment. So anyway, okay, confidence and faith. So, I think for me, like others have done this, so can I. Others have sat a retreat, others have sat for long periods of time, others have been, relieved of levels of suffering. So can I. Inspiration from the Buddha, from a teacher, a book, seeing what inspires you. So concentration, increasing your curiosity of the breath, or of walking meditation, like really getting into it. I don't know if you guys do meditation, walking meditation, but like there was a time, like I broke the walking meditation into like 5 parts, like lifting, moving, placing, and then shifting and lifting and moving and placing and shifting. And then each little incremental shift that happens within the body, becoming super curious and engrossed in that, really brings alertness to the mind, and both increases confidence and energy. This is something that you can do when there's a lot of agitation in the mind, a lot of kind of busyness or distraction, kind of get more engrossed in it. Also with the breath, like beginning to see the nuances of each breath, or the beginning, the middle, and the end. Is there a pause between the end of one breath and the beginning of another? There's a lot going on, and we're often not paying much attention to it. All right, so the last one, wisdom. So not knowing or seeing the importance of this too shall pass, or that which arises passes away. So this is applying wisdom, particularly to kind of like fantasy or craving, this idea of like, okay, I'm in this craving, I'm in this fantasy now, but this too shall pass. And that which arises, it will pass. Nothing lasts. This is the teaching of a Nietzsche, the teaching of wisdom. All right. Okay, so I'm going to open up now, because that was kind of a lot, but I have there's about 20 minutes more, and I just want to see kind of where you guys at. I'm happy to clarify anything that has maybe felt not clear, and just to kind of, Rick, can you just join us audio? Okay. Oh, got it. No camera or microphone. All right, so let's kind of look at this here. Is there any conflict between the goal of being free of sensual pleasures and the practice's frequent encouragement to, say, feel or feet on the ground, or concentration on the breath, perhaps even listening closely to a bell, that sort of thing? All of these require a concentration and respect for the senses, do they not? Not meaning to argue, just to ask for clarification. Okay, is there a conflict between the goal of being free from sensual pleasures and so the free from sensual pleasures and concentration isn't necessarily the tool. It really, the wisdom is the tool applied for sensual pleasures, because we get kind of swept away and lost. And the idea there is to see the impermanent nature of things. And also there's like focusing, if it's fantasy, if it's sexual fantasy, focusing on the unattractiveness of ourselves or the bodies, or the decay. I remember talking to monks in Thailand, and I worked with this a bit myself too, of just actually, like, if we're seeing kind of having fantasy, to like see it rotting, see the body decaying, and then see if we could still hold on to the fantasy. And I guess for monks, that, especially young monks, it might be pretty challenging to be kind of lost in some sexual fantasy. So yeah, I don't know that there's really a conflict between the goal of being free from sensual pleasures. We're not actually trying to be free from sensual pleasures. Sensual pleasures are going to happen. It's really a non-attached appreciation that is kind of, that's the wisdom response, is to know, like, yeah, I'm enjoying this drink. And this drink will end, but I can still enjoy it and let it go, let it pass. So thanks for your question. Anyone else? Questions? Or if you want to share about your meditation and how you kind of experienced the hindrances during your meditation today, this evening. Yeah.
Hi. I notice a lot of times, well, especially today's meditation, when my mind starts to wander, it wanders towards worry and projecting into the future. And today I was more able to bring it back and concentrate on the breath, acknowledge that it was there, acknowledge that I was worried, because I have a lot of stuff going on that's kind of future based and stuff that I'm stressing over. Yeah. But I was able to come back to the breath and say, okay, I know it's there, but I'm not going to worry about it right now, and refocus. And it just seemed like every time I started to drift into this fantasy of what's going to happen, and then immediately become anxious about it and feel worry about it. And then I had to keep pulling it back. But I was able to pull it back more today than I have in the past. I
Right.
didn't get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. And thanks for saying that. And, I think that that's like our whole fucking country right now is just like, I actually get on Insight Timer. I recorded a meditation called FUD, Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt, at the beginning of this pandemic. And so I don't know if you're on Insight Timer or not, but I have like 12 different meditations on there that are geared towards, all these practices. So that's what I hear you really working with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, aren't we all, right? But what I also heard you say is that you recognized, as I've been instructing you to do, that's a tendency that you have, is to be future based, and perhaps and you also what I heard you say, Anna, right? What I heard you say, you noticed the thought, and that you had moved into the future, and then you started to notice anxiety in the body. Oh, no. Someone was trying to FaceTime me. So inconsiderate. What was I saying? I forgot. Oh yeah, it had to do with so you notice the thought, and then we're aware, anxiety in the body, right? So that there was a thought, the thought was associated, and you would start to get kind of pulled into it, notice the anxiety, and then coming back.
Pull it back.
And then did the anxiety diminish?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this present time experience is, you're going to get lost in the past, in the future. It's happening all day long. And as often as you can stop, take a breath, observe what's happening in your body, and proceed with awareness. So kind of making that shift back as loving and kind. And we don't need to beat up the body for being anxious. There's probably some damn good reasons that has been a tendency for you. And for some people with depression, you know what I mean? Like that's why I try to think about it as future focused and past focused, because there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of pathology on that. There's not a lot of like kind of negative connotation. Yeah, you have a mind that is future focused. So that. Yeah. And you're working on it, which is great. This idea of not now. And I actually want to give that as an instruction. So, like you kind of said as something similar, like, I'm not going to worry about this now. I'm not going to shut it down, but it's just not now. And I think of it like a Mickey Mouse glove, just like pushing it back gently, not like beating it down with a baseball bat.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, good. Good for you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Could you pause, or could you mute?
Yeah.
We have another question. This is Shannon. I am horribly restless the past 2 weeks. Is forcing myself to sit for a set period going to do more harm than good? I can't remember the term you used to force. It's strong determination to force myself to sit still. Is there still compassion in the forcing myself to just stay put? Good question. Restlessness is, concentration is what we're kind of using with restlessness, similar to Anna's insight. And it doesn't mean that you just slack off and let your mind spin out. I call them head weasels, right? Just like you can do that all day long. This is strong determination, is like, I'm going to sit. I'm going to do 10 minutes, do 15 minutes. I'm going to still do that. I'm not going to let my mind rule me, And this is where I often, like I used to call my meditation group in Northern California, Rebel Dharma, because I taught, it's like rebelling against the mind's tendency to get caught in restlessness and agitation. So also, so that's one thought. I'm just going to tell this person, stop it. I'm in a class. I'm in a class. Please stop. Hopefully that felt kind. Yes, there can be compassion infused with, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I forgot. That's how they responded. Anyway, compassion is super important. And there's a way, Shannon, that when we kind of turn our attention toward where we're kind of really working with the third foundation of mindfulness, like what is restlessness and agitation? What is the restlessness and agitation or the depression or the anxiety or the fear or the whatever? What is it trying to tell us? There is something about, and not the busyness of like, what's it trying to tell us? I got to figure it out. Let's do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to journal about it for, ever. No. It's more like holding it. What is agitation or restlessness trying to tell me? What is being, what's being called for? And that's a more of a compassionate response. And it doesn't mean that it's like twofold. We're gonna stay connected to energy, and and we're gonna do that. Like we're gonna have strong determination, and we're not gonna beat ourselves up if we twitch or we move into thinking, right? That's why that like not now glove, I don't know why, but it was like, it actually, to be honest, it was the hamburger helper. Like it's the hamburger helper, kind of thing. I don't know, you have to be, I guess, 80s or early 90s at least, but it's like that glove that is just softly lobbing the thought or the anxiety behind me. Like, so I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm just saying not now. But see for yourself. Please actually let me know in the future, like how that works. Of course, yeah. Okay, we're just about out of time. If there's one more insight or question. So there was one last piece. Oh, I'll save that for another night. Familiar, predictable, safe, and painful. This is suffering. This is sometimes what they call dukkha dukkha. So the hindrances become tendencies, right? That we repeat certain patterns, like tendencies in the mind, like restlessness or agitation, like anxiety, like depression, like anger and ill will, like doubt, insecurity, lust, lustful. Lust is such a weird word, but really it's like kind of fantasies. It's really just about like checking out, pleasure seeking. I mean, addicted state of minds. Like I want to just be numbed out. And people do that with all kinds of things, right? Food, sex, and social media, all kinds of things. But anyway, so familiar, predictable, safe, and painful is the patterns that we get locked into. And so applying these 5 faculties to see the hindrances is really shifting to doing what's unfamiliar, what's maybe unpredictable, what might feel a little bit unsafe, but leads ultimately to freedom or happiness or joy, ease. That's the hope. At least I hope so. Shit, I've been doing this for 2 decades. What if it didn't work out at all? No, I have a lot of confidence in the Buddha's teaching, and I have a lot of confidence in the teachers that have gone before me. So, and I think that's it. Thank you all for your time and attention. And let's just take a moment and gather all the goodness of our practice. May all the goodness of our practice, all the intention, all the merit, all the moments of bringing the mind back, of turning toward loving kindness, may it all be dedicated to the freedom from suffering, our own suffering, and the suffering of all beings. May each one of us do what needs to be done to free ourselves from the suffering of greed, hatred, and delusion. May we all be free. Of course, againstthestream.com, if you want to make a donation. There's also a Venmo. You can do that there. And yeah, thanks to all of you for showing up and participating. And spread the word too. Like, if you have friends that you think would be interested in the Against the Stream stuff, send them to our againstthestream.com, and they could sign up for our different Zoom classes. And hopefully you're going to other classes as well and checking out the different teachers. And we hope to see you again. Yeah, thanks to everyone.